The morning mist hung heavy over the countryside as Detective Inspector Sarah Williams received the call that would change everything. Her phone buzzed at exactly 6:47 a.m., interrupting her quiet breakfast routine. The voice on the other end belonged to Chief Inspector Morrison, and his tone carried an urgency she had rarely heard before. "Williams, I need you at headquarters immediately. We have a situation involving the royal family that requires your expertise," Morrison said, his words careful and measured. Sarah had worked on sensitive cases before, but nothing had ever involved the monarchy directly. Within an hour, Sarah found herself in a secure briefing room at Scotland Yard. Surrounded by officials she recognized from newspaper photographs, representatives from the Royal Protection Unit sat alongside members of the Crown Estate Commission, their faces grave with concern. At the head of the table sat Lord Pemberton, the Queen's former private secretary, a man whose loyalty to the late monarch was legendary. "Detective Inspector Williams," Lord Pemberton began, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. "What I'm about to share with you must remain absolutely confidential. 3 days ago, we received information suggesting that items belonging to the late Queen Elizabeth II may have been removed from royal residences without proper authorization." Sarah felt her heart rate quicken. The implications of such a statement were enormous. "What kind of items are we discussing, sir?" "Jewelry primarily," replied Lady Thornton from the Crown Estate Commission. "Pieces that were part of the Queen's personal collection, not the crown jewels themselves, but items of significant historical and monetary value nonetheless." Lord Pemberton leaned forward, his expression serious. The information came from a former palace staff member who has recently come forward. According to this individual, certain items were systematically removed from Balmoral and other royal residences over a period of several months, before and after the Queen's passing. Sarah opened her notebook, her training taking over despite the extraordinary nature of the case. "Do we have specifics about which items are missing?" "A diamond and sapphire necklace given to the Queen by her father, King George VI, for her 18th birthday," Lady Thornton read from a detailed list. "A pair of emerald earrings that belonged to Queen Mary, several brooches with historical significance, and a collection of rare pearls from the South Pacific." The room fell silent as Sarah absorbed this information. These weren't just valuable pieces of jewelry. They were irreplaceable links to British royal history. Each item carried stories and memories that spanned generations of the monarchy. "The investigation has led us to believe," Lord Pemberton continued, "that these items may currently be located at a private estate in the Cotswolds. An estate that belongs to Queen Camilla." Sarah's pen stopped moving. The weight of what she was hearing settled over her like a heavy blanket. Queen Camilla, who had spent years earning public acceptance, was now at the center of a scandal that could shake the very foundations of the modern monarchy. "I understand the sensitivity of this situation," Sarah said carefully. "What evidence do we have beyond the testimony of this former staff member?" Chief Inspector Morrison, who had remained quiet until now, spoke up. "We've been conducting a discreet investigation for the past 72 hours. Financial records show unusual activity in accounts connected to the estate. Additionally, we have photographic evidence from a private security firm that was contracted to install new safes at the property." Lady Thornton added, "The timing of these installations coincides with the period when the items allegedly went missing. Furthermore, the specifications of the safes suggest they were designed to house valuable jewelry and small artifacts." Sarah studied the faces around the table. These were people who had dedicated their lives to serving the crown, and the pain of this potential betrayal was evident in their expressions. The late Queen Elizabeth II had been more than a monarch to them. She had been a beloved figure whose memory they were sworn to protect. "What's our next step?" Sarah asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Lord Pemberton exchanged glances with the other officials before responding. "We need to conduct a search of the Cotswolds estate. However, given Queen Camilla's position, this must be handled with extreme care and discretion. We've obtained the necessary warrants," Chief Inspector Morrison added. "The search will be conducted by a specialized team from the Royal Protection Unit, with you leading the investigation. The operation is scheduled for tomorrow morning." Sarah felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. This wasn't just another case. It was a matter that could affect the stability of the monarchy itself. Public trust in the royal family had been rebuilt over years following various scandals, and something like this could undo all of that progress. "What's Queen Camilla's current whereabouts?" Sarah inquired. "She's attending a state dinner in Edinburgh," Lady Thornton replied. "She won't return to the Cotswolds estate until Thursday evening. This gives us a window of opportunity to conduct our search without creating a public spectacle." As the meeting concluded, Sarah gathered her materials and prepared to leave. The case file she now carried contained photographs of the missing jewelry, detailed floor plans of the estate, and background information on all relevant parties. Each document was stamped with the highest security classifications. Walking back to her car, Sarah reflected on the extraordinary turn her career had taken. 20 years in law enforcement had prepared her for many things, but investigating a sitting queen was not one of them. The irony wasn't lost on her that she was now tasked with potentially uncovering crimes committed by someone who, according to constitutional law, was theoretically above the law itself. The drive back to her office gave Sarah time to process what she had learned. The missing jewelry represented more than monetary value. These pieces were tangible connections to Britain's royal heritage. If they had indeed been taken without authorization, it represented not just theft, but a violation of the sacred trust placed in those who serve the crown. As she pulled into the police station parking lot, Sarah's phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. The message was brief but chilling. "Some secrets are better left buried. Stop digging before you find something you'll regret." Sarah stared at the message for several moments before deleting it. In her experience, anonymous threats usually meant she was getting close to something important. Tomorrow's search of Queen Camilla's estate would either clear her name completely or uncover a scandal that could reshape the British monarchy forever. The Cotswolds estate stretched across rolling hills like something from a fairy tale, its honey-colored stone walls glowing in the early morning light. Detective Inspector Sarah Williams arrived at the gates just after dawn, accompanied by a convoy of unmarked vehicles carrying the specialized search team. The estate, known as Thornfield Manor, had belonged to Queen Camilla's family for 3 generations before becoming her private retreat. Sarah studied the imposing Georgian mansion through her binoculars as the team prepared their equipment. The house sat majestically among ancient oak trees, its perfectly manicured gardens showing no signs of the drama that was about to unfold. Smoke curled lazily from one of the chimneys, indicating that the small staff maintained their routines even in the Queen's absence. "Remember, this operation requires absolute discretion," Sarah addressed her team of 12 officers and specialists. "We're looking for specific items of jewelry, but we must treat everything we encounter with the utmost respect. This is still a royal residence regardless of the circumstances." Detective Sergeant James Patterson, Sarah's longtime partner, approached with the search warrant and detailed floor plans. "The main house has 43 rooms across 4 floors, he reported. "Intelligence suggests the most likely locations for any secured storage would be the private study on the 2nd floor, the master bedroom suite, and a basement area that was recently renovated." The team leader from the Royal Protection Unit, Commander Harrison, joined their huddle. "We've been monitoring the property for the past 24 hours. There are currently 5 staff members on site, the housekeeper, 2 maids, a gardener, and a security guard. They've all been briefed that a routine security inspection is taking place." Sarah nodded, impressed by the careful planning that had gone into maintaining the operation's cover story. The last thing anyone wanted was news of this search reaching the media before they had concrete answers. As they approached the main entrance, the heavy wooden doors opened to reveal Mrs. Beatrice Hartwell, the estate's longtime housekeeper. She was a woman in her 70s with silver hair pulled back in a neat bun and intelligent blue eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. Her expression remained professionally neutral, though Sarah detected a hint of curiosity behind her polite demeanor. "Good morning," Mrs. Hartwell said, her voice carrying the refined accent of someone who had spent decades in service to aristocratic families. "Her Majesty informed me that you would be conducting your inspection today. How may I assist you?" Sarah showed her identification and smiled warmly. "We appreciate your cooperation, Mrs. Hartwell. We'll do our best to minimize any disruption to the household routine." "Of course," the housekeeper replied, stepping aside to allow the team entry. "I've prepared tea and refreshments in the morning room should you require them during your work." The interior of Thornfield Manor was breathtaking. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow patterns across cream-colored walls adorned with priceless artwork. Persian rugs covered polished hardwood floors, and fresh flowers filled antique vases throughout the reception areas. Everything spoke of wealth, taste, and centuries of careful curation. Sarah divided her team into 3 groups, each responsible for searching different sections of the house. She personally took charge of examining Queen Camilla's private study, a room that Mrs. Hartwell explained was strictly off-limits to most staff members. The study was smaller than Sarah had expected, but richly appointed with leather-bound books, family photographs, and personal mementos. A massive oak desk dominated one corner, its surface covered with correspondence and official documents. Behind the desk hung a portrait of the late Queen Elizabeth II, her familiar smile seeming to watch over the room's activities. Sarah began her systematic search, carefully examining each drawer, shelf, and potential hiding place. The work was meticulous and time-consuming, requiring her to photograph and document everything before moving items to continue her search. She found nothing unusual until she reached the bottom drawer of an antique filing cabinet tucked behind a heavy curtain. The drawer appeared to be stuck, requiring more force than the others to open. When it finally gave way, Sarah discovered why. A small digital safe had been installed inside, completely hidden from casual view. The safe was modern and sophisticated, clearly a recent addition to the centuries-old furniture. "Sergeant Patterson," Sarah called quietly, not wanting her voice to carry through the house. "I need you to see this." James appeared at her side within moments, his expression growing serious as he examined the concealed safe. "That's definitely not original to the furniture," he observed. "And look at the installation work. This was done by professionals within the last few months." Sarah studied the safe's digital display and sophisticated locking mechanism. This wasn't the type of simple safe someone might use for storing household cash or minor valuables. The specifications suggested it was designed to protect items of significant worth. "We'll need the specialist team to handle this," Sarah decided. "Let's continue searching other areas while they work on accessing the contents." Meanwhile, Detective Constable Emma Richardson was conducting her search of the master bedroom suite. The room was opulent but tasteful, with silk wallpaper, antique furniture, and artwork that probably cost more than most people's houses. What caught her attention, however, was a series of jewelry boxes arranged on an elaborate dressing table. The boxes were clearly expensive, handcrafted pieces made from exotic woods and decorated with mother-of-pearl inlays. Emma carefully photographed each box before opening them, finding an impressive collection of jewelry inside. Diamond necklaces, pearl strands, sapphire brooches, and emerald rings sparkled under the room's soft lighting. "Inspector Williams," Emma called through her radio. "You might want to see what I found up here." Sarah climbed the grand staircase to the master suite, her footsteps muffled by the thick carpeting. The jewelry collection was indeed impressive, but as she studied each piece, she realized something was missing. None of the items matched the descriptions of the missing royal jewelry they were specifically searching for. "These are beautiful pieces," Sarah noted, "but they're not what we're looking for. Keep documenting everything, but let's not get distracted from our primary objective." In the basement, Detective Inspector Marcus Webb was examining the recently renovated storage area. The contrast between this modern space and the rest of the historic house was striking. New concrete floors, updated electrical systems, and climate control equipment suggested significant recent investment in this area. Webb discovered another safe built into the basement wall, this one much larger than the one found in the study. Like its counterpart upstairs, this safe appeared to be a recent installation, with modern security features and digital locking mechanisms. "Control to all teams," Sarah announced through her radio. "We've now located 2 sophisticated safes on the property. Both appear to be recent installations and both are secured with advanced locking systems. Specialist team, please prioritize accessing these containers." As the technical specialists worked on the safes, Sarah found herself in conversation with Mrs. Hartwell, who had brought the promised tea and seemed genuinely curious about the nature of their security inspection. "The Queen takes security very seriously," Mrs. Hartwell commented, pouring tea with practiced grace, especially after some of the incidents involving other royal properties in recent years. "I imagine security is always a concern," Sarah replied carefully, accepting the delicate china cup. Have there been any recent changes to the security arrangements here? Mrs. Hartwell paused thoughtfully. Well, there was some work done over the summer. New safe installations, updated alarm systems, that sort of thing. Her Majesty said it was important to properly protect certain family heirlooms. Sarah's pulse quickened at this information. Family heirlooms? Oh, yes, the housekeeper continued, seemingly unaware of the significance of her words. The Queen mentioned that she was taking custody of some pieces that had belonged to the late Queen Elizabeth. She said it was important that they be properly preserved for future generations. The radio crackled to life, interrupting their conversation. Inspector Williams, please report to the study immediately. We've accessed the first safe. Sarah's heart pounded as she rushed back to the study where the technical specialists had successfully opened the concealed safe. The small space inside was illuminated by a powerful LED light, revealing several velvet-lined jewelry boxes and what appeared to be official documents sealed in protective plastic covers. Detective Specialist Thomas Chen, an expert in handling valuable evidence, carefully removed the first jewelry box using white cotton gloves. The box itself was remarkable, crafted from midnight blue velvet with the royal cipher embossed in gold on the lid. As he opened it, the room seemed to hold its breath. Inside, nestled against cream-colored silk, lay a spectacular diamond and sapphire necklace. The piece was breathtaking, with deep blue sapphires surrounded by brilliant cut diamonds in an intricate pattern that spoke of master craftsmanship. Sarah immediately recognized it from the photographs in her case file. That's the necklace, she whispered, hardly believing what she was seeing. The one given to Queen Elizabeth II by her father for her 18th birthday. The team worked in careful silence as Chen photographed the necklace from every angle before moving to the next box. This one contained a pair of emerald earrings, their green stones so vibrant they seemed to glow with inner fire. The third box held several brooches, each one a miniature work of art combining precious metals with rare gems. Inspector, Chen said quietly, there's also this. He held up one of the sealed document packets. Through the clear plastic, Sarah could see what appeared to be a handwritten letter on official royal stationery. Don't open it here, Sarah instructed. We'll examine all documents under controlled conditions back at headquarters. As they continued cataloging the safe's contents, Sarah's radio crackled again. Inspector Williams, we've also accessed the basement safe. You need to see this immediately. Sarah left Sergeant Patterson to oversee the study while she descended to the basement. The scene that greeted her there was even more remarkable than what they had found upstairs. The larger safe had contained not just jewelry, but also several small paintings, antique silver pieces, and what appeared to be historical documents dating back generations. Detective Inspector Webb was examining a collection of South Pacific pearls arranged in a custom-made display case. These match the description of the missing pearl collection, he reported, but there's something else here that's extremely interesting. He led Sarah to a corner of the safe where several leather-bound journals were stacked. The top journal was open, revealing pages of handwritten entries in elegant script. Sarah leaned closer and realized she was looking at what appeared to be a personal diary. Look at the dates, Webb pointed out. These entries are from the months immediately following Queen Elizabeth's death. Sarah read the visible entry, written in what she now recognized as Queen Camilla's distinctive handwriting. The transition has been more difficult than anyone could have imagined. Charles is overwhelmed with his new responsibilities, and I find myself constantly worried about maintaining the dignity and traditions that defined Elizabeth's reign. Today I made the decision to personally safeguard several pieces from her private collection. Some family members have already begun making claims, and I fear these irreplaceable items could be lost in the chaos of succession discussions. The implications of this entry hit Sarah like a physical blow. Rather than theft, this appeared to be an attempt at preservation. But the legal questions surrounding such actions were complex and potentially explosive. Continue documenting everything, Sarah instructed, but handle those journals with extreme care. They could be crucial to understanding the true nature of this situation. Back upstairs, Mrs. Hartwell approached Sarah with a concerned expression. Inspector, I hope you don't mind my asking, but is everything all right? The staff are beginning to worry that something serious has happened. Sarah studied the elderly housekeeper's face, seeing genuine concern rather than guilt or deception. Mrs. Hartwell, I need to ask you some direct questions. And I hope you'll be completely honest with me. Of course. Inspector, were you aware that Queen Camilla had placed items from Queen Elizabeth's collection in the safes here at the estate? Mrs. Hartwell nodded without hesitation. Oh yes, Her Majesty was quite open about it with the senior staff. She explained that she was temporarily storing some pieces until proper arrangements could be made for their permanent housing. Did she mention why she felt this was necessary? The housekeeper considered her words carefully. Her Majesty was concerned about the chaos following Queen Elizabeth's death. She mentioned that various family members were making competing claims about personal items, and she wanted to ensure that the most historically significant pieces were protected until everything could be properly sorted out. Sarah felt a mixture of relief and confusion. This testimony suggested that Queen Camilla's actions, while legally questionable, might have been motivated by preservation rather than personal gain. When did these items arrive at the estate? Sarah continued. Over several weeks during the autumn, Mrs. Hartwell replied. Her Majesty would arrive with secure transport vehicles and personally oversee the placement of items in the safes. She was very particular about climate control and security measures. The radio interrupted their conversation once again. All teams, please report to the main hall for briefing. Sarah gathered her entire team in the estate's impressive entrance hall, where the morning light streaming through tall windows created an almost cathedral-like atmosphere. The weight of what they had discovered was evident on every face. What we've found here today, Sarah began, requires extremely careful handling. We have recovered what appears to be the missing jewelry from Queen Elizabeth's personal collection. However, the circumstances surrounding their presence here are more complex than we initially believed. She paused, choosing her words carefully. Rather than evidence of theft, we may be looking at an unauthorized but well-intentioned attempt to preserve royal artifacts during a period of family confusion and competing claims. Detective Sergeant Patterson raised his hand. What's our next step? Do we remove everything immediately? We'll secure all items as evidence, Sarah decided, but we need to handle this with extreme sensitivity. The legal and constitutional implications are beyond our immediate scope. We'll need guidance from the Crown Estate Commission and potentially constitutional lawyers. As the team prepared to carefully package and transport the recovered items, Sarah found herself studying the portrait of Queen Elizabeth II that hung prominently in the main hall. The late Queen's serene expression seemed to observe the proceedings with the same dignity she had maintained throughout her long reign. The irony wasn't lost on Sarah that they were potentially investigating someone for trying to protect the memory and legacy of the very monarch whose portrait watched over them. Queen Camilla's actions, while legally problematic, appeared to stem from genuine concern for preserving royal heritage rather than personal greed. Inspector? Chen called from the study. There's something else you should see. Sarah returned to find Chen examining another document from the safe. This one appeared to be a formal letter addressed to the Crown Estate Commission, dated several weeks after Queen Elizabeth's death. It's a letter from Queen Camilla, Chen explained, officially requesting guidance on the proper handling of Queen Elizabeth's personal collection. It mentions her concerns about family disputes and asks for official procedures to ensure proper preservation of historically significant items. Sarah read the letter carefully, noting the formal language and evident respect for proper protocol. The letter had apparently never been sent. Perhaps because events had moved too quickly, or because Queen Camilla had decided to take action first and seek official approval later. As the day progressed and the recovery operation neared completion, Sarah realized that this case was far from over. They had found the missing jewelry, but the real investigation was just beginning. Questions of authority, protocol, and family dynamics within the royal family would need to be carefully examined before anyone could determine whether laws had actually been broken. The secure evidence room at Scotland Yard had never housed items quite like these. Under bright fluorescent lights, the recovered jewelry from Queen Elizabeth's collection lay carefully arranged on white examination tables, each piece photographed, catalogued, and secured behind reinforced glass. Detective Inspector Sarah Williams stood before this display of royal heritage, still processing the magnitude of what they had uncovered. The preliminary analysis had taken 3 days to complete. Each item had been examined by experts from the Crown Estate Commission, photographed by specialists, and documented with meticulous precision. The total value of the recovered pieces exceeded £12 million, but their historical significance was truly priceless. Lord Pemberton arrived at headquarters that morning, carrying a thick folder of documents and wearing an expression that mixed relief with deep concern. Accompanying him was Sir Malcolm Hartley, the Crown's chief legal advisor, whose presence indicated that the constitutional implications of this case were being taken very seriously indeed. Detective Inspector Williams, Lord Pemberton began as they settled into the secure briefing room, I want to personally thank you for the discretion and professionalism you've shown throughout this investigation. The manner in which you've handled this sensitive matter has been exemplary. Sarah nodded appreciatively while opening her case file. Sir, I believe our findings paint a more complex picture than we initially anticipated. While Queen Camilla clearly had these items in her possession without proper authorization, the evidence suggests her motivations were preservation rather than personal gain. Sir Malcolm leaned forward, his silver hair catching the overhead lighting. That's precisely what makes this situation so constitutionally challenging. Queen Camilla's actions, while perhaps well-intentioned, have created a precedent that could have far-reaching implications for how royal property is handled during succession periods. Lord Pemberton spread several documents across the table. We've been conducting our own internal investigation into the circumstances surrounding Queen Elizabeth's death and the immediate aftermath. What we've discovered supports your assessment of Queen Camilla's motivations. The documents revealed a chaotic period following the Queen's death, when various royal family members, staff and estate managers struggled to implement proper protocols for handling personal property. Multiple family members had indeed made competing claims for specific items, creating confusion about who had authority to make decisions about the late Queen's personal collection. The problem, Sir Malcolm explained, is that Queen Camilla took action outside established legal frameworks. Even with good intentions, her decision to remove these items and store them privately could be interpreted as theft under British law, regardless of her royal status. Sarah studied the legal brief that Sir Malcolm had prepared. What about the journal entries we found? They clearly document her thought process and concern for preserving the items. Those entries are actually quite helpful, Lord Pemberton admitted. They demonstrate that Queen Camilla understood the items belonged to the Crown estate, not to her personally. Her writing shows awareness that her actions were temporary measures until proper arrangements could be made. The discussion was interrupted by a knock on the door. Chief Inspector Morrison entered with a grave expression, followed by a woman Sarah didn't recognize, a tall, elegantly dressed individual with graying hair and intelligent eyes. Inspector Williams, Morrison announced, I'd like you to meet Dr. Margaret Ashworth, former private secretary to Queen Elizabeth II. She's been working closely with us to understand the context of these events. Dr. Ashworth took a seat at the table and opened her own folder of documents. Inspector, I've known Queen Camilla for many years, and I can provide some important background about the period following Queen Elizabeth's death. She explained that the transition period had been more chaotic than the public realized. Queen Elizabeth had very specific wishes about how her personal collection should be handled, but those wishes were contained in private letters and personal conversations rather than formal legal documents. Queen Camilla was one of the few people who was aware of these wishes. What kind of wishes? Sarah asked. The late Queen was particularly concerned about certain pieces with deep family history. Dr. Ashworth continued. She had expressed worry that some items might be dispersed or sold if they fell into the wrong hands during the confusion of succession. She specifically mentioned wanting someone she trusted to ensure these pieces remained together and properly preserved. Lord Pemberton nodded gravely. We found evidence of informal conversations between Queen Elizabeth and Queen Camilla about this very topic in the months before the Queen's death. Sarah felt the complexity of the case deepening. So Queen Camilla may have believed she was acting according to Queen Elizabeth's wishes? That appears to be the case, Sir Malcolm confirmed. However, the law requires formal documentation for such arrangements. Personal conversations and informal agreements, no matter how well-intentioned, don't provide legal authority for removing Crown property. Dr. Ashworth pulled out a photograph from her folder. This might help explain Queen Camilla's urgency. The image showed a heated family meeting that had taken place just weeks after Queen Elizabeth's death, with various royal family members clearly engaged in animated discussion. That meeting was about the distribution of Queen Elizabeth's personal effects, Dr. Ashworth explained. Several family members were making strong claims for specific pieces, and the discussion became quite contentious. Queen Camilla left that meeting very concerned about what might happen to the most historically significant items. Sarah examined the photograph, noting the tense body language and serious expressions of the family members present. How soon after this meeting did Queen Camilla begin moving items to her estate? Within a week, Lord Pemberton replied. The timing suggests she was responding directly to the concerns raised during that family discussion. Chief Inspector Morrison, who had been listening quietly, spoke up. The question now is how we proceed. We have evidence of what could be considered theft, but we also have evidence of good intentions and possible informal authorization from the late Queen herself. Sir Malcolm consulted his legal notes. From a constitutional standpoint, this case could set important precedents. If we prosecute Queen Camilla, it would be the first time in modern history that a sitting queen has faced criminal charges. The implications for the monarchy could be enormous. What are our options? Sarah asked. Several possibilities, Lord Pemberton replied. We could recommend prosecution, which would likely result in a constitutional crisis. We could seek a private resolution that acknowledges wrongdoing, but avoids public prosecution. Or we could determine that Queen Camilla's actions, while technically improper, were justified by extraordinary circumstances. Dr. Ashworth leaned forward. There's something else you should know. 3 days ago, Queen Camilla contacted me directly. She wants to meet with the investigation team to provide her own account of events. Sarah felt her pulse quicken. She's willing to be interviewed? More than that, Dr. Ashworth continued. She's prepared to make a full statement about her actions and provide additional documentation that might clarify her authority to take possession of the items. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. A voluntary statement from Queen Camilla could either completely resolve the case or make it significantly more complicated. When and where would this meeting take place? Sir Malcolm asked. Tomorrow afternoon, Dr. Ashworth replied. At Clarence House in a private setting with only essential personnel present. Sarah looked around the table at the assembled officials, each representing different aspects of British law and royal protocol. Tomorrow's meeting would either provide the clarity they needed or create new complications in an already complex case. There's one more thing, Lord Pemberton said quietly. King Charles III has been informed of the investigation. He's requested to be present during Queen Camilla's statement. The implications of this request were staggering. The King's presence would add another layer of constitutional complexity to an already unprecedented situation. Sarah realized that tomorrow's meeting wouldn't just determine Queen Camilla's fate. It could reshape how the British monarchy handled internal disputes and succession issues for generations to come. Clarence House stood majestically in the late afternoon sun as Detective Inspector Sarah Williams approached its famous entrance. The Georgian mansion, with its cream-colored facade and elegant proportions, had witnessed countless moments of royal history, but today would mark one of its most extraordinary chapters. Sarah walked through the security protocols with unusual nervousness. In her 20-year career, she had interviewed politicians, celebrities, and dangerous criminals, but never a queen. The gravity of the situation weighed heavily on her shoulders as she was escorted through the house's opulent corridors by a silent footman in traditional livery. The private sitting room where the meeting would take place was smaller and more intimate than Sarah had expected. Soft afternoon light filtered through tall windows draped with silk curtains, illuminating antique furniture and family photographs that spoke of generations of royal life. Fresh flowers filled crystal vases, and the room carried the subtle scent of English roses. Lord Pemberton and Sir Malcolm Hartley were already present, seated at a polished mahogany table where official documents and recording equipment had been discreetly arranged. Dr. Margaret Ashworth sat nearby, her familiar presence serving as a bridge between the formal investigation and the royal family. At precisely 4 o'clock, the door opened and King Charles III entered, his tall frame and distinguished bearing commanding immediate attention. Sarah had seen him countless times in photographs and news footage, but his physical presence was surprisingly imposing. His face showed the weight of recent months, the loss of his mother, the burden of new responsibilities, and now this crisis involving his wife, Your Majesty, Sarah said, offering a respectful bow as protocol required. Detective Inspector Williams, the king replied. his voice carrying the refined accent of decades of public speaking. "I want to thank you personally for the discretion you've shown throughout this investigation. My family is grateful for your professionalism during what has been an extremely difficult period." Queen Camilla entered moments later, and Sarah was struck by how different she appeared from her public persona. Gone was the confident smile and polished presentation of official engagements. Instead, Sarah saw a woman clearly under enormous stress, her face showing the strain of recent weeks and the weight of the accusations she faced. "Inspector Williams," Queen Camilla said, extending her hand in greeting. "I appreciate you agreeing to meet under these circumstances. I hope we can resolve this matter in a way that honors both the law and my late mother-in-law's memory." The formal introductions completed, everyone took their seats around the mahogany table. Sarah activated the recording equipment and began with the standard legal warnings. A surreal experience when addressing a queen. "Your Majesty," Sarah began, "I want to assure you that this statement is voluntary, and you may discontinue it at any time. Do you understand the nature of this investigation?" Queen Camilla nodded solemnly. "I understand completely. You're investigating the unauthorized removal of items from Queen Elizabeth's personal collection, and my role in securing those items at my private estate. Can you tell us, in your own words, what led to your decision to take possession of these items?" Queen Camilla paused, collecting her thoughts before responding. The weeks following Elizabeth's death were chaotic in ways the public never saw. While the official succession proceeded smoothly, the private business of sorting through her personal effects became complicated very quickly. She explained that within days of the funeral, various family members had begun making claims on specific pieces from the Queen's collection. Some of these requests were reasonable and based on clear family connections to particular items. Others seemed motivated by financial considerations rather than sentimental or historical value. King Charles leaned forward slightly. "If I may add context, Inspector, my mother had very specific feelings about how her collection should be handled. She was particularly concerned that certain pieces with deep historical significance might be dispersed or sold." Queen Camilla continued her account. "Elizabeth had spoken to me privately about these concerns multiple times in her final months. She was especially worried about the diamond and sapphire necklace from her father, and the emerald earrings that had belonged to Queen Mary. She called them anchors to our family's history, and said they should never be separated from the crown's collection." "Did Queen Elizabeth give you specific instructions about these items?" Sarah asked. "Not formal written instructions," Queen Camilla admitted, "but she made it very clear that she trusted me to ensure these particular pieces remained intact and properly preserved. She said she had confidence that I would do the right thing if circumstances required intervention." Sir Malcolm Hartley interjected gently. "Your Majesty, while those conversations clearly influenced your actions, they don't constitute legal authority to remove crown property." "I understand that now," Queen Camilla replied. "At the time, I was focused on preventing what I saw as potential damage to irreplaceable historical artifacts. The family meeting where various claims were being made became quite heated, and I genuinely feared that some pieces might disappear into private collections." Sarah consulted her notes. "Can you walk us through the actual process of moving the items to your estate?" Queen Camilla's account was detailed and methodical. She had personally overseen every transfer, using secure transport and ensuring proper storage conditions. "I documented everything carefully," she explained. "I always intended this to be temporary storage until proper legal arrangements could be established." Dr. Ashworth spoke for the first time during the meeting. "Your Majesty, can you tell Inspector Williams about the letter you drafted to the Crown Estate Commission?" "Ah, yes," Queen Camilla said, looking somewhat embarrassed. "I wrote a formal letter requesting guidance on proper procedures for preserving these items during the succession period. I intended to send it after securing the pieces, but events moved so quickly that I never completed the formal submission." She produced a copy of the letter from her handbag, along with additional documentation. "I also prepared detailed inventories of everything I took, including photographs and written descriptions. I wanted to ensure complete transparency when the time came to transfer everything to proper Crown custody." Sarah examined the documents, noting their thoroughness and professional presentation. This wasn't the behavior of someone attempting to steal royal property. It was the documentation of someone planning to return items to proper authorities. "Your Majesty," Sarah continued, What was your long-term plan for these items? I intended to present a formal proposal to the Crown Estate Commission within 6 months, Queen Camilla explained. I wanted to allow time for the immediate succession issues to settle, then work with legal experts to establish proper procedures for preserving the most historically significant pieces. King Charles added his own perspective. Inspector, I want to emphasize that my wife's actions, while technically unauthorized, were motivated entirely by respect for my mother's wishes and concern for preserving royal heritage. She gained nothing personally from these actions. Sarah noted the king's obvious support for his wife, but also his careful acknowledgement that her actions had been unauthorized. This delicate balance reflected the complex constitutional issues at the heart of the case. Your Majesty, Sarah asked Queen Camilla, knowing what you know now about the legal complications, would you have acted differently? Queen Camilla considered the question carefully. I would have sought formal legal guidance before taking action, she admitted. But if that guidance had resulted in delays that allowed these irreplaceable pieces to be dispersed or damaged, I believe I would have made the same choice. Sometimes protecting our heritage requires accepting personal risk. The statement continued for another hour, with Queen Camilla providing detailed answers to every question. Her responses were consistent, thoughtful, and showed clear awareness of both the legal issues and the broader implications of her actions. As the formal portion of the interview concluded, King Charles spoke directly to Sarah. Inspector Williams, I hope you'll consider the extraordinary circumstances surrounding these events. My wife acted from loyalty to my mother's memory and genuine concern for preserving our nation's heritage. Sarah looked around the room at the assembled individuals. A king defending his wife, a queen accepting responsibility for her actions, and legal experts grappling with unprecedented constitutional questions. The case had evolved far beyond a simple theft investigation into a complex examination of duty, loyalty, and the intersection of personal conscience with legal authority. Thank you all for your cooperation, Sarah said as she gathered her materials. This statement will be crucial in determining how we proceed. As she prepared to leave Clarence House, Sarah realized that tomorrow would bring the most challenging decision of her career, recommending whether a queen should face criminal charges for actions that appeared motivated by noble intentions but violated established law. The emergency meeting at 10 Downing Street was unlike any in recent British political history. Prime Minister Rebecca Harrison sat at the head of the cabinet table, surrounded by the most senior legal and constitutional experts in the country. The weight of the decision they faced could reshape the relationship between the monarchy and the law for generations to come, Detective. Inspector Sarah Williams presented her final report to the assembled group, which included the Attorney General, the Lord Chancellor, the Cabinet Secretary, and representatives from both the Crown Estate Commission and the royal household. The atmosphere in the room was tense with the gravity of the situation. Based on our investigation, Sarah began, I believe Queen Camilla's actions constitute a technical violation of the law regarding crown property. However, the evidence overwhelmingly supports her claim that these actions were motivated by genuine concern for preserving royal heritage rather than personal gain. Attorney General Sir David Morrison reviewed the case file one final time. The legal facts are clear. Queen Camilla removed crown property without proper authorization and stored it privately for several months. Under normal circumstances, this would constitute theft regardless of intent. But these are hardly normal circumstances, interjected Lord Chancellor Patricia Westfield. We're dealing with unprecedented situations following a monarch's death, informal instructions from the deceased queen, and complex family dynamics within the royal family itself. Prime Minister Harrison leaned back in her chair, clearly weighing the enormous implications. What are our realistic options here? And what are the potential consequences of each course of action? Sir David laid out 3 possible paths forward. First, we could proceed with formal charges against Queen Camilla. This would uphold the principle that no one is above the law, but it would create a constitutional crisis and potentially damage the monarchy's reputation. The room fell silent as everyone contemplated this scenario. Prosecuting a sitting queen would be unprecedented in modern British history and could have profound effects on public confidence in both the legal system and the royal family. The second option, Sir David continued, is to arrange a private resolution. Queen Camilla could accept responsibility for her actions, return all items to proper Crown custody, and perhaps make a formal apology. This would acknowledge wrongdoing without public prosecution. And the third option? The Prime Minister asked. We could determine that Queen Camilla's actions, while technically improper, were justified by extraordinary circumstances and the informal authority given to her by Queen Elizabeth. This would essentially clear her of wrongdoing but could set concerning precedents for future situations. Sarah found herself thinking about the human elements of the case that extended beyond legal technicalities. Prime Minister, if I may add some context from our investigation, the recovery operation revealed extensive documentation showing Queen Camilla's clear intent to return these items to proper custody. Her actions appear to have prevented potential family disputes that could have resulted in the permanent loss of historically significant pieces. Cabinet Secretary James Patterson spoke for the first time. We also need to consider King Charles III's position in all of this. He clearly supports his wife and views her actions as protective of his mother's legacy. Any prosecution could put him in an impossible position between supporting his family and respecting the law. The discussion was interrupted by a knock on the door. The Prime Minister's private secretary entered with an urgent message. Ma'am, we've just received word that the story is about to break in the media. The Daily Telegraph has apparently obtained information about the investigation and plans to publish tomorrow morning. The room erupted in concerned murmurs. A media frenzy around this story could complicate any resolution and potentially force their hand before they were ready to make a final decision. How much do they know? Lord Chancellor Westfield asked. According to our sources, the private secretary replied, they have details about the search of Queen Camilla's estate and the recovery of jewelry belonging to Queen Elizabeth II. They're framing it as a major scandal involving theft of royal property. Prime Minister Harrison stood and began pacing, a sign that those who knew her recognized as deep concentration. This changes everything. We can't allow this story to spiral out of control without our input. Sir David Morrison consulted his legal notes. If we're going to take action, we need to do it immediately. The longer we wait, the more difficult it becomes to control the narrative. Sarah raised her hand tentatively. Prime Minister, there's something else you should know. During our investigation, we discovered evidence that other royal family members have also taken items from various royal residences over the years without formal authorization. Queen Camilla's actions weren't unique, just more systematic and better documented. This revelation added another layer of complexity to an already complicated situation. If Queen Camilla were prosecuted for actions that other family members had also taken, it could appear selective and unfair. Attorney General Morrison shook his head. That information actually makes prosecution more difficult. It suggests a pattern of informal property management within the royal family that has been tacitly accepted for years. The Prime Minister returned to her seat with a decisive expression. I've made my decision. We'll pursue the private resolution option. Queen Camilla will accept responsibility for her actions, formally return all items to Crown custody, and provide a statement acknowledging that proper procedures should have been followed. What about the media story? The Cabinet Secretary asked. We'll get ahead of it, the Prime Minister replied. We'll release our own statement, explaining that a routine review of royal property management led to the identification of some procedural irregularities that have now been resolved amicably. Lord Chancellor Westfield nodded approvingly. That approach acknowledges that something happened without sensationalizing it or creating constitutional crises. Sarah felt a mixture of relief and uncertainty about the decision. The resolution seemed fair given the circumstances, but she wondered about the broader implications for law enforcement when dealing with members of the royal family. There's one more element we need to address, Sir David added. The procedures for handling royal property during succession periods need to be completely revised to prevent similar situations in the future. Agreed, the Prime Minister said. I want a comprehensive review of all protocols governing royal property management, with particular attention to succession periods and family disputes. As the meeting concluded, Sarah reflected on the extraordinary week that had brought her from a routine call about missing jewelry to the highest levels of British government. The case had tested not just her investigative skills, but the entire system's ability to balance respect for the monarchy with adherence to the rule of law. The Prime Minister approached Sarah as the others filed out. "Inspector Williams, I want to personally thank you for your handling of this matter. Your discretion and professionalism have been exemplary." "Thank you, Prime Minister. I hope the resolution serves everyone's interests." "I believe it does," the Prime Minister replied. "Sometimes the best solutions aren't the most dramatic ones. Queen Camilla will retain her dignity, the crown will recover its property, and the monarchy will emerge stronger with better procedures in place." As Sarah left Downing Street, she couldn't help but think about Queen Elizabeth II's portrait that had watched over the investigation at Thornfield Manor. Perhaps the late Queen would have approved of a resolution that preserved both royal heritage and family unity while respecting the law. Tomorrow would bring the public announcement of the resolution, but tonight Sarah allowed herself a moment of satisfaction that a complex and sensitive case had been resolved without constitutional crisis or lasting damage to any of the institutions involved. 6 months after the investigation that had captivated the highest levels of British government, Detective Inspector Sarah Williams stood in the Tower of London's Jewel House, watching tourists marvel at the crown jewels. The irony wasn't lost on her that she was now looking at displays of royal treasures that had once been at the center of a constitutional crisis. The public announcement of the resolution had been handled with masterful understatement. The official statement simply noted that procedural reviews of royal property management had identified areas for improvement and that all concerned parties had cooperated fully in implementing enhanced protocols. The media storm that many had feared never materialized, largely because the story lacked the dramatic criminality that sells newspapers. Queen Camilla had personally overseen the return of every item to proper crown custody, working closely with curators and conservation experts to ensure the pieces were properly catalogued and preserved. The diamond and sapphire necklace that had started the investigation now resided in a climate-controlled vault, its provenance carefully documented for future generations. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text message from Dr. Margaret Ashworth. "Coffee at the Royal Academy? There's something I think you should see." An hour later, Sarah found herself in the elegant cafe at the Royal Academy of Arts, where Dr. Ashworth was waiting with a leather portfolio and a knowing smile. "Inspector Williams, I wanted to show you something that puts our entire investigation in a different perspective," Dr. Ashworth said, opening the portfolio to reveal a handwritten letter bearing Queen Elizabeth II's personal seal. Sarah leaned forward to read the elegant script. The letter was addressed to Queen Camilla and dated just 3 weeks before Queen Elizabeth's death. "My dear Camilla," the letter began, "as I approach the end of my long reign, I find myself increasingly concerned about the preservation of our family's heritage during the inevitable transition period. I have observed how succession can sometimes lead to the dispersal of important historical artifacts, and I am particularly worried about several pieces in my personal collection that hold deep significance for our monarchy's history." The letter continued, "I am writing to formally request that you serve as guardian of these specific items during the initial confusion that may follow my death. Your judgment and commitment to our traditions give me confidence that you will ensure these treasures remain intact until proper long-term arrangements can be established." Sarah stared at the document in amazement. "Dr. Ashworth, this changes everything. Queen Camilla did have authorization from Queen Elizabeth II. "Indeed she did," Dr. Ashworth confirmed. "This letter was found among Queen Elizabeth's private papers during a routine archival review last month. It was sealed in an envelope marked, 'To be opened only in the event of dispute regarding my personal collection.' The implications were staggering. Queen Camilla's actions hadn't been unauthorized at all. She had been following explicit instructions from the late Queen. The investigation, while thorough and necessary, had been based on incomplete information." "Why didn't Queen Camilla mention this letter during our investigation?" Sarah asked. Dr. Ashworth smiled sadly. "Because she didn't know it existed. Queen Elizabeth never told her about the letter. It was the Queen's way of protecting Camilla from exactly the kind of scrutiny she faced. If anyone questioned Camilla's actions, this letter would eventually surface to vindicate her." Sarah shook her head in wonder at Queen Elizabeth's foresight. Even in death, the late Queen had anticipated potential. conflicts and provided a solution that would protect both her beloved collection and the woman she had entrusted to guard it. "Has Queen Camilla seen this letter yet?" Sarah inquired. "King Charles delivered it to her yesterday evening," Dr. Ashworth replied. "I'm told she wept when she read it, partly from relief, but mostly from realizing how carefully Queen Elizabeth had considered every detail of her final wishes. The revelation cast the entire investigation in a new light. Queen Camilla hadn't been acting on informal conversations or general impressions. She had been following specific royal instructions, even if she hadn't known those instructions were formally documented. "What happens now?" Sarah asked. "The official record will be updated to reflect this new information," Dr. Ashworth explained. "Queen Camilla will be fully exonerated, and the protocols we developed during the investigation will remain in place to prevent future confusion." As they sat in comfortable silence, Sarah reflected on the complex layers of duty, loyalty, and foresight that had characterized the entire affair. Queen Elizabeth II had protected her collection, her family, and the institution of monarchy through careful planning that extended beyond her own lifetime. "There's one more thing," Dr. Ashworth added, producing another document from her portfolio. "Queen Elizabeth also left specific instructions about several other matters that could arise during the succession period. This letter ensures that similar confusion won't occur in future transitions." Sarah examined the additional documentation, noting Queen Elizabeth's meticulous attention to potential problems and her practical solutions for each scenario. The late Queen had essentially created a handbook for managing royal property during succession periods, based on decades of experience and deep understanding of family dynamics. "Dr. Ashworth, I have to ask, do you think Queen Elizabeth anticipated that her instructions to Queen Camilla might be questioned?" "I think Queen Elizabeth anticipated everything," Dr. Ashworth replied with a smile. "She understood that her death would create a period of uncertainty, and she wanted to ensure that the people she trusted most would be protected while they carried out her wishes." As Sarah walked back through London's historic streets, she marveled at the complexity of the case that had brought her into contact with the highest levels of British society. What had begun as a potential theft investigation had revealed the careful planning of a monarch who had dedicated her life to preserving Britain's heritage and protecting the institution she served. The case files from the investigation would be sealed for 50 years, ensuring that the sensitive details of royal family dynamics remained private. But the protocols developed during the investigation would serve as permanent safeguards, preventing future confusion about royal property management during succession periods. Sarah's phone rang as she reached her car. It was Chief Inspector Morrison with news of a new case, a straightforward burglary that would seem refreshingly simple after the constitutional complexities of the past few months. As she drove toward her next assignment, Sarah couldn't help but smile at the thought that somewhere in Windsor Castle, a portrait of Queen Elizabeth II continued to watch over the treasures she had so carefully protected. The late Queen's final act of service had been to ensure that the traditions and heritage of the British monarchy would survive the inevitable confusion of transition. Guided by people she trusted to do the right thing, the investigation was closed, but its legacy would endure in the form of better procedures, clearer protocols, and the knowledge that even queens must sometimes operate on faith, that their careful planning will eventually vindicate the choices they make in service of something greater than themselves. In the end, Detective Inspector Sarah Williams had learned that the most complex cases aren't always about crime and punishment. Sometimes they're about understanding the intersection of human nature, institutional duty, and the delicate balance between preserving the past and adapting to the future.